Halfway through folding the laundry, I found one of her socks. Not the usual white ankle kind. This one was black lace, thigh-high, with a tiny red bow stitched near the cuff. I didn't stop folding. I just placed it neatly atop the stack and stared at it like it might blink first. Our washing machine had a habit of coughing up secrets, loose receipts, lipstick-stained tissues. One time, a bobby pin that definitely wasn't hers, too curly, too coated in a scent I couldn't name but couldn't forget either. But this sock was new. And the thing was, we hadn't had sex in 8 months. We'd been married 12 years, the kind of marriage that looked normal on paper. Joint mortgage, 2 cars, 1 dog, no kids, not for lack of trying. But after a while, we stopped trying. We stopped a lot of things. Michelle used to leave notes on the fridge, little things. Don't forget the green tea. Take your lunch, fridge smells like feet. Love you, don't die on the highway. I hadn't seen one of those in over a year. Instead, I'd started seeing her phone face down more often. She'd developed this new habit, holding her breath when a notification pinged. Like silence could somehow muffle suspicion. And still, I did nothing. I folded her laundry, I scrubbed the tub, I made her tea when she had cramps. I pretended I didn't hear the way she said thank you like I was the mailman instead of her husband. The sock wasn't the beginning. It was the last straw I was finally willing to name. That night she came home late again. Not absurdly. Late, not suspiciously late. Just late enough to land in that gray area between maybe traffic and maybe fucking someone else. She walked through the door already apologizing. Sorry, babe. We had a surprise client dinner. Last minute. Her voice was chipper. She smelled like Prosecco and hotel soap. Her earrings were different from the ones she left in. I stayed seated at the kitchen table. Her sock, the one I'd found, sat folded in front of me like a polite guest waiting for its owner. She froze the second she saw it. Where'd you find that? In the dryer. She didn't blink, didn't fumble. Just walked past me, grabbed a glass from the cupboard. That's old, she said, pouring herself water. From our anniversary trip. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the sock again. She didn't ask why it was out. She didn't ask why I was so quiet. That's when I knew for sure. The unraveling wasn't dramatic. No slamming doors. No screaming matches. No, I'm in love with someone else monologues. That might have been easier to stomach. Instead, it was death by omission. I started noticing the little edits she'd made to her life without telling me. Her new workout routine that didn't involve sweat. The fact she kept her Bluetooth off but location services disabled. Her Amazon orders. Things that arrived at the neighbor's house instead of ours. One morning, I checked our joint account and saw a hotel charge. A nice one, downtown, midweek. I took a screenshot, sent it to her with just one word. Why? She replied 2 hours later. Work client needed last-minute hosting. I didn't feel like driving back. I wanted to believe her, but you don't. Wear black lace thigh-highs to host a client. The tipping point came on a Tuesday. I had taken a personal day. Not to spy, not to stalk, just to breathe, to be alone in the house without pretending, without curating my tone, without asking how her day went when I already knew she hadn't spent it thinking of me. I opened her laptop. I hadn't planned to. I just wanted music, something backgroundy while I made lunch. But it was already open. Email still pulled up, cursor blinking in a half-typed reply. The subject line of the email? Can't wait for next weekend. The thread was worse. Explicit, sentimental, familiar in all the ways she hadn't been with me in years. They'd been seeing each other for 6 months. His name was Peter. He was funny but gentle. Smart without being condescending. Made her feel 17 again. She'd told him she felt trapped at home, that she and I were more roommates than lovers, that I'd checked out emotionally. That was the part that gutted me. Not the sex, not the hotel, not the secret dinners, the narrative. She painted herself as the survivor of a slow death, the woman who hung in there longer than she should have. She made me the villain in a story I'd been trying to save without realizing it was already Ash. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. Instead, I started collecting screenshots, statements, photos of receipts, voice memos of my own thoughts, in case I started rewriting history the way she had. It felt sick in a way, like I was building a case instead of a conversation, but I knew I'd need it. When I told my brother, the first person I confided in, he asked one question: "Are you going to go nuclear or quiet?" At the time, I didn't know. I just knew I wasn't going to let her win the narrative. Not this time. The first step was therapy, not couples, solo. I found a therapist through my work's EAP program. Her name was Dr. Singh, first generation, tough love. No bullshit. I sat across from her in a beige room, soft jazz piping in through invisible speakers, and told her everything. She asked, "What do you want from this?" And I said, "I want to leave without becoming the kind of man she says I am." She nodded once. "Then we'll start by defining who you actually are." That was the beginning of the real divorce, not from her. From the version of myself I thought I had to be. The quiet husband, the peacekeeper, the folder of laundry and maker of excuses. The man who stayed because leaving felt like failure. When I finally served her papers, I did it on her birthday. That sounds cold. Maybe it was, but I figured she'd already been celebrating new beginnings behind my back. Might as well make it official. I didn't make a scene. No public spectacle. Just handed her the envelope as we sat across from each other. At a brunch she thought was for her. Her smile faded when she opened it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even ask why. She just whispered, "You're really doing this." And I said, "You already did." The divorce wasn't messy. That part surprised people. We didn't fight over assets. We didn't claw each other's eyes out in court. Because here's the thing. When someone's already rewritten the story in their head, they don't care how it ends. Just that they get to be the hero in the version they tell others. She let me go without a fight. Maybe because Peter was waiting. Maybe because she never really wanted me to stay. The story went viral after someone on Reddit reposted a portion of my original thread. I hadn't meant for it to explode. I'd written it late one night under a throwaway account just to get the ache out of my chest. I titled it, "I Gave My Wife Her Birthday Present, Divorce Papers." It blew up, front page, thousands of upvotes. Comment after comment of, "You handled this like a king, and she didn't deserve you," and "This is how quiet men burn bridges, with precision." I didn't respond to any of them. I just read each one and reminded myself that I didn't need vindication from strangers, but it sure helped not to feel crazy anymore. It's been a year. I still fold my own laundry. I still find random bobby pins that don't belong to anyone, but now I leave them where they fall. I don't chase ghosts anymore. It was a comment buried under hundreds, maybe thousands. Some anonymous user wrote, "Bet Peter's married too." These people never cheat alone. At first I dismissed it. Trolls say anything for karma points. But that night I stared at that line for longer than I should have. Never cheat alone. It wasn't about vengeance. Not then. But there's a funny thing that happens when your world goes quiet after a collapse. You start hearing the echoes, and some of those echoes sound like questions you never thought to ask. 3 weeks after the brunch-turned-divorce announcement, I walked past Michelle's phone still sitting on the kitchen counter. We were technically still sharing the house. Temporarily. Legal logistics. She slept in the guest room. We barely spoke, except for calendar notes or, "I'll be out late." I hadn't touched her phone in 12 years of marriage. Not once. But that night, I picked it up. No passcode. She must have forgotten she'd turned it off. Or maybe she didn't care anymore. Either way, the door was open. I told myself I'd just look for Peter's number. Confirm a name, a detail, closure. Instead, I found a group chat. It was called The Coven. The messages went back months. "Girl, if he ever finds out about Hotel Thursday, he won't. He's blind in love, too comfy, that's the problem. Mine still thinks we're in marriage counseling, LOL. I told mine I'm doing girls' yoga every Friday. Peter's better cardio anyway." There were 4 women in the thread, including Michelle. I recognized one, Claire. She used to work with Michelle, came to our wedding, brought a hideous toaster as a gift. They called themselves the Unwives. It wasn't just Peter, it was multiple men, code-named, scheduled, juggled. One of them, Mr. Mornings, was married, with 2 kids. One of them left his wife after 2 months of seeing Michelle. Another sent money, thousands, and they shared everything. Screenshots, voice notes, ratings. There was even a spreadsheet. Yes, a literal Google sheet with tabs. Performance, gifts, excuses used, emotional risk. Michelle's row had notes beside Peter. Best sex so far. Emotionally dumb but hot. Not long-term. Too clingy. I had to sit down. Dr. Singh didn't say anything for a full minute when I told her. She just stared at me like she was weighing the words. Then finally, "You're grieving a woman who doesn't exist anymore." Maybe never did. I asked her what I should do with what I knew. "Do you want revenge?" she asked. "No," I said. "I want balance." "Then give yourself the closure she never will. Don't chase hers." It sounded noble, mature. But part of me still wanted to scorch the ground, and that's when I remembered something. Peter had left a comment on the Reddit post. I searched by username. There he was. Not even subtle. His Reddit name was Peter Returns 2018. He'd commented under a few posts defending women who leave quietly. Then, under my thread, "You only told one side. Maybe she was unhappy for a long time. Maybe you made her feel invisible." I clicked his profile, looked through his history, took screenshots. Then I found the post that made my stomach sink, a 6-month-old thread titled, "How to Reconnect with My Kids After Divorce." She moved them across the country. His wife had left, took the kids to Arizona, left him with supervised visitation after she discovered, and I quote, multiple emotional affairs with co-workers. Peter wasn't just a homewrecker. He was already standing in the rubble of his own. I called Claire. I still had her number from the wedding. She picked up on the second ring. "Hello? It's Jason." Long pause. "Oh. Wow. Jason. What's going on?" "I need to ask you a question. It's not a trap. I'm not angry. I just need the truth." She was quiet. "Did you know Peter was married when Michelle started seeing him?" More silence. Then, "We all knew." I exhaled through my nose. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because none of us were trying to save the marriage. We were trying to survive it. I could hear her inhale, like a cigarette drag. "You think we're monsters, right?" "I think you're adults who made choices. That's all." "Well," she said. So did you. She hung up. I didn't tell Michelle I knew. Instead, I made a copy of the spreadsheet and saved it to a hard drive. Then, I printed a few of the more damning messages, and I mailed them to Peter's ex-wife, certified. Return receipt requested. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. You have no idea how much this helps. Thank you. I didn't reply. A month passed. Michelle moved out. Left behind a few things, mugs, a blanket she never used, one of the wedding photos in a broken frame. I packed them all into a box, left it on the porch. 2 days later, it was gone. The last I saw of her was on Instagram. Someone sent me a screenshot. Michelle and Peter at a vineyard, holding hands. The caption read, "A second chance at real love." I looked closer. Same earrings. Same eyes that used to look at me like I was enough. Only now, they looked right into the camera like she'd won something. I showed the photo to Dr. Singh. She's branding her next phase, she said. Let her. I posted one last update. To Reddit, I told them everything. The sock, the spreadsheet, the coven. I blurred names. I kept it anonymous. But I told it all. The thread exploded. 2 million views. Journalists reached out. Podcasts begged for interviews. One producer wanted to option it for a docuseries. I said no, because that wasn't the point. I didn't want to be famous for surviving betrayal. I just wanted the world to understand that not all divorces are loud. Some are quiet, until you hear the echo of your own silence. And by then, it's already too late. It was the DM that stopped me cold. I'd disabled my Reddit inbox weeks ago. Too many strangers projecting, preaching, or trauma dumping. But someone found me through LinkedIn, of all places. No profile photo, just a generic name. The message read, "You think you're the only one. You should talk to her ex-fiancé." No other context, no link, no follow-up. Michelle was never engaged before me, or so she claimed. But that message, it haunted me. I didn't want to care. I was doing the healing thing, therapy, journaling, going to the gym again like I was trying to punch ghosts out of my own muscles. Still, I couldn't unsee it. I brought it up during a session with Dr. Singh. Her eyes narrowed, gently, the way she does when she smells smoke but no fire. "Are you reaching for more answers?" she asked, "or trying to stay connected to the chaos?" I told her I didn't know. She said, "You don't need to look back if the road behind you is already burned." That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because deep down, part of me needed to know, was she always like this? Or did something change? I didn't have to look far. Michelle had a box in the attic. One of those see-through plastic bins she never labeled because I'll remember what's in it. It was shoved behind an old suitcase and the Christmas wreath we hadn't used since 2019. Inside the bin, high school yearbooks, old Polaroids, concert wristbands, letters, and in the bottom, a small red velvet ring box, empty, folded underneath. It was a crumpled note, still faintly scented with cheap cologne. I unfolded it slowly. "I hope someday you're honest with someone. But it won't be me. Matt." I didn't recognize the handwriting, or the name, but it had a date, April 2009. 3 months before she met me, I went full detective. Not my proudest move. I checked her Facebook archives, back when wall posts were still public. Scrolled through. A timeline that felt like peeling wallpaper off a moldy wall. There he was, Matt Weller. Listed once in a comment. Matt and Michelle, 2 years strong. No photos. Just comments. A few mutual friends. I reached out to one. A guy named Greg, who'd also come to our wedding, though I hadn't spoken to him since. I messaged him, "Hey, weird question. Do you remember a guy named Matt Weller from Michelle's past?" His reply came fast. "Holy shit, yeah. Her ex proposed to her. She ghosted him, literally disappeared while he was planning the wedding. That was the first time I physically felt grief as embarrassment. Like, I married someone who had a history of vanishing acts, and I thought I was special enough to be the exception. I wasn't. I was just the next Mark who stuck around long enough for her to get bored." The media storm hit its second wave after someone reposted my update to TikTok. A voiceover reading of my thread with stock footage of vineyards and slow-motion hotel lobbies. It hit 3 million views in 4 days, and then the stories came flooding in, other men, and some women too. Private messages, secret accounts. Some had photos. One even had an audio file, Michelle's voice, unmistakably hers, saying things I never thought I'd hear her say. I don't do guilt. Guilt is for people who didn't plan better. I just mirror what they want. It's easier than arguing. If I get caught, I'll just pivot. I always land on my feet. It felt like peeling off a mask that had already been peeled once, before, only to find another mask underneath. I wasn't grieving a marriage. I was grieving a performance. And then something strange happened. Peter messaged me. Not through Reddit. Through email. Somehow, he found my work address. The subject line read, "She did it again." His email was short. She left. No warning. Took the car. Blocked my number. "You were right. I should have listened. Sorry for the comment." Peter. I didn't reply. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, feeling nothing. And that scared me more than anger ever could. Michelle's mother reached out next. We'd never been close. She always seemed more like an onlooker than a participant in Michelle's life. She called from a number I didn't recognize. "Jason," she said softly, I wanted to say, I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. "For not telling you, for hoping she'd grow out of it, for being complicit." I didn't know what to say. She continued. "She's always run. Ever since. She was little. If things weren't perfect, she'd burn the whole room down and act like someone else lit the match. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have believed me? Probably not, but it still stung." The third Reddit thread went up not by me, but by someone claiming to be another ex. Different city. Different time, same story, same patterns. The thread was titled, "My ex-wife ghosted me after our wedding. Turns out she married someone else 3 years later and did it again. She'd left a man at the altar, literally. Guests waiting. Caterers. Scrambling. The dress hung on a hook in the bridal suite. No note. Just her phone turned off. Michelle had ghosts all over the country. I was just the one who finally wrote it down. Dr. Singh had me write a letter. Not to Michelle. To the version of myself who stayed. It started with, "You did your best." And it was never going to be enough. But not because of you. That's when I cried for the first time since the papers were signed. Not out of sadness. Out of relief. I'd spent years thinking I failed to hold something together. But you can't hold someone who's already halfway out the door before the lock even clicks. I took the last box of her things. Old receipts, expired skincare, a few keepsakes from trips she said she hated, and drove it to Goodwill. On the way, her playlist started playing from my phone. I deleted it mid-song. Didn't even check the title. Just silence now. And it felt honest. It was the sound of a spoon clinking against a mug that pulled me back, one of those soft ceramic taps that echoes too loud in a quiet house. I was stirring coffee alone, again, in a kitchen that used to hold 2 toothbrushes, and now only echoed with single footsteps. But this time, the silence didn't feel lonely, it felt earned. And then came the knock. 3 gentle raps, not urgent, not desperate, just polite. I opened the door to see her standing there. Michelle. She looked different, not disheveled or dramatic, just drained. Like someone who had been moving from one borrowed life to the next and was finally out of disguises. Her hair was longer, dyed darker. Her nails were unpainted, the kind of detail you only notice after 12 years of noticing everything. "I come in?" she asked, her voice a ghost of the one that used to sing in the shower. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I said, "What do you want?" She hesitated, looked down at her shoes, then back up. "Closure," she said, "or something close to it." I stepped aside. She didn't sit down right away. Just stood in the middle of the living room like she wasn't sure if she belonged anywhere anymore. "I heard about the post," she said. I nodded. "And the podcast and Peter." She didn't flinch at the last name, which told me she'd finally accepted how much had unraveled. "I didn't expect it to become viral," I said. "I did," she replied, almost whispering. That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" She exhaled through her nose. "You're a good writer, and people love a clean villain." That's when I laughed, not out of amusement, but out of the sheer absurdity of her framing. "I didn't make you the villain, Michelle. You just wrote your own ending." She finally sat, on the edge of the couch like it might bite her. "I was angry," she said, "but not at you." I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "I was angry that you kept trying, that you kept folding my clothes, buying me vitamins, remembering which tea helped my cramps. I didn't want a husband. I wanted permission to escape. That hurt more than any affair. Then why marry me? Because I thought love was supposed to feel safe. And it did, until I realized I didn't know what to do with that." She paused, swallowed hard. "So I sabotaged it. Like I always do." She pulled something out of her purse. A printed photo. One of us on our 3rd anniversary. The trip to the coast, where I'd rented a cabin with no cell service. We looked happy. Or maybe just well-practiced. "I kept this," she said. "It reminds me of the version of me that tried." I looked at the photo, then back at her. "You never really tried, Michelle. You performed. You shaped yourself into whatever fit the room. But the minute the lights went off, you left." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "No," she said. "And I'm sorry." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like a fog that both of us finally agreed to walk through instead of pretend wasn't there. "I'm not here to fix anything," she added. "I know it's broken. I wanted you to hear it from me before someone else decided how your story ended." I nodded. "I already decided that," I said. She looked at me, almost smiling through the pain. "Good. Then maybe we're finally even." She left the photo on the table and walked out without asking for anything. No keys, no forgiveness, not even her ring, which I'd found behind the dryer 2 weeks after she moved out. Just an echo of what used to be a future. The Reddit thread hit. Its third wind after someone published a think piece titled, "When the Villain Comes Knocking," a post-divorce conversation that redefined accountability. It wasn't my article. A journalist who followed my story had reached out. I declined the interview, but they pieced together the timeline and turned it into a case study on narcissistic cycles and quiet healing. The comments were wild. Some praised me for facing her. Others said I should have slammed the door. A few wondered if we'd reconcile. That last part made me laugh. Reconcile? You don't reconcile with someone who left their soul in a different story long before the plot turned. Claire. Message me next. Yes, Claire from the Coven. Her tone was different this time. Less defensive. More human. She wrote, I'm in therapy now. I told my husband everything. We're separated. I know it doesn't mean much, but I wanted you to know I see it now. I see what we became. You didn't deserve to be collateral. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness. Not out. Just peace. Sometimes silence is the only applause you get when you survive something ugly. Dr. Singh asked me during our next session, would you take her back if she came crawling? No, I said. Why? Because the version of me who would have said yes doesn't live here anymore. She smiled. First real smile I'd seen from her in months. You're ready. And then came the invite. A wedding. My cousin's. The same cousin who once told me, you'll never find anyone as good as Michelle. Poetic, really? I RSVP'd, yes. Went alone, suit tailored, hair trimmed, a new pair of shoes that didn't squeak. When someone asked how I was doing, I said, I learned how to cook for one, and how to laugh at night without anyone else in the room. They blinked, then smiled. At the reception, they played our old wedding song by accident, You Are the Best Thing. I didn't flinch. I just took a sip of wine and let the lyrics wash over me like a rainstorm I'd already dried off from. I thought of Michelle, and for the first time, I didn't feel betrayal. I felt gratitude, because she taught me how not to. Love, and that's a lesson worth framing. The last thing I expected on a Thursday morning was a letter in the mailbox, real ink, real paper, postmarked from a town I hadn't thought about in over a decade. The return address was Arizona. I opened it carefully like it might explode. It was from Peter's ex-wife. Jason, I'm not writing to rehash pain. I'm writing to thank you. What you sent me, the screenshots, the truth, saved me more than you know. It validated everything I felt, but couldn't prove, and it kept me from going back. I'm rebuilding now, slowly. The kids are okay, and I'm okay. If you ever wonder if what you shared made a difference, it did. We were two strangers married to the same shadow. You brought the light. Mira, I held the letter for a long time, not because it was dramatic, but because it was proof that truth travels, even when we think it dies unheard. That night, I walked past our old wedding photo still sitting face down on the bookshelf. I hadn't thrown it out. I thought I had. But there it was, buried under a stack of unpaid alumni mailers and a candle I'd never lit. I finally picked it up. We looked young, not just in age, but in belief, in the way her hand curled toward mine, in the way my eyes trusted. Hers. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel anything. So I flipped the frame around, placed it upright on the shelf, and walked away. Not out of nostalgia, out of peace. 3 months later, I started seeing someone new. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee dates that turned into long walks and shared playlists and laughter that didn't feel like trying too hard. Her name was Eliza. She asked what my last relationship taught me. I told her to check the foundation before building the house. She nodded, didn't pry. Just offered her story in return. A long engagement. Called off 2 weeks before the wedding because she realized they wanted 2 different futures. She didn't flinch when I told her I was divorced. She just said, "You're not broken, you're rebuilt." Our first road trip was to the same coastal cabin I'd once taken Michelle to. Eliza didn't know that. I didn't tell her. But standing on that cliffside, watching her laugh while the wind tangled her hair, I realized something. The past only repeats when you're too scared to write new pages. I wasn't scared anymore. I posted my final update to Reddit under the same account. No dramatic title this time. Just, I survived the divorce that went viral, and then I lived again. It got fewer upvotes, fewer comments. No trending tabs or cross posts to AR justice served. But it was the most honest thing I'd written. I wrote about how healing isn't a movie montage. It's burnt toast, skipped calls, mismatched socks, and one good joke at the right moment. I wrote about how I used to think love meant staying. Now I know love means recognizing when leaving is the bravest thing you can do, and I ended it with this. I'm not a cautionary tale. I'm a man who learned how to choose peace over closure. Sometimes the ending isn't shocking. It's quiet, and it still matters. Eliza and I moved in together last spring. 1 bathroom. No secrets, no passcodes. Just 2 people learning how to trust the floor beneath their feet. We hang our keys on separate hooks. We fold our laundry together. She buys the wrong tea sometimes, and I don't mind. Because now, when I find a sock that isn't mine, I smile. Because I know who it belongs to, and I know she's not going anywhere. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.